Noth vehemently denies the allegations, which date back to 2004, and claims the encounters were consensual. And stocks slid Monday as COVID cases keep rising. All three major benchmark indexes lost more than 1%. For the Dow, that's 433 points. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's a good way to start a radio program that is Constitution-oriented and conservative on its face. And that's what this one is right here. So if you believe in the Constitution, if you are a political conservative, maybe tending a little bit towards libertarianism, you're in the right place. And if you're not, you certainly are in the right place, because that's where you really ought to be. So let's start out with Demi Cudney here. A little technical matter to take care of here. Jose, is Facebook frozen? Mine is either Facebook is frozen or I'm frozen. Okay, starting out with the Daily News. And interesting, we had two good editorials today. Each paper ran a pretty good editorial. And here's the Daily News. Our view, government has no authority to evaluate religious exemptions. Members of the Guam Freedom Coalition and other concerned citizens, that's a caption for a picture. The editorial, while most workers covered by mandatory Wuhan virus vaccine requirements have complied with requirements to get shots, some have sought exemptions for religious reasons. No major religions are opposed to vaccinations, and Pope Francis advised people to get vaccinated as, quote, an act of love. But some individuals have raised concerns that COVID-19 vaccinations conflict with their sincerely held religious or spiritual beliefs and practices. because freedom of religion is a constitutionally guaranteed right. It is not the place of the government to determine if our religious beliefs are sincerely held. I'm going to repeat that sentence. Because our freedom of religion is a constitutionally guaranteed right, it is not the place of the government to determine if our religious beliefs are sincerely held. If civil authorities are no more qualified to evaluate religious exemptions than religious leaders are to enforce civil laws, then how should requests for religious exemptions be handled? The Department of Public Health and Social Services has received 36 requests for religious exemptions to vaccines and testing requirements, according to spokeswoman Janella Carrera. Those came from government of Guam workers, private sector employees, and people who are seeking work but don't want to comply with vaccine or testing requirements. Because public health is a government agency and not a religious authority, officials have paused their review and sought guidance from the Office of the Attorney General. In the meantime, no requests have been approved or denied. Well, it's one of those things where you have to ask this question, how can the government not decide? A question like this, there's no possible way to not decide it, because if the request comes in and you take no action on it, you have effectively denied it. And we've had a caller here who told us that that's exactly what happened. He said 3 people at the Department of Education attempted to perfect a religious exemption, and they were told, no, we aren't entertaining those. Military, now going on with the editorial, military branches are now besieged with exemption requests they are unlikely to approve, the Associated Press reported. Meanwhile, troops claiming religious reasons for avoiding the shots are perplexed because exemptions are theoretically available, yet seem impossible to obtain. In the military, leaders have to weigh troop readiness and safety against the individual's religious rights. In other workplaces, bosses have to weigh overall workplace safety and company or agency efficiency against the beliefs of individuals. Because we cherish our religious freedom, nobody should have to get a vaccine if it violates a sincerely held religious belief. But that doesn't mean people should be allowed to work in an environment where they are likely to catch a virus that continues to mutate and poses a threat to the general population. Employers should make reasonable accommodations for religious requests when available. But when the health of others is at stake, or accommodation provides hardship for the employer, the safety of the public has to come first. That is the responsibility of the government. So they start out, this looks like something that they must have got Melvin Wonpat to help them write, because it starts out looking like one thing and it turns out looking like something else.
They had to change it at the end so they can support their false narrative.
Exactly. You have the hard copy, right, Jose? Read the title of the editorial from the hard copy.
Responsibility. And the byline is, government's job is to keep people safe.
All right, that went out with a hard copy. Now, this is the online copy. Our view, government has no authority to evaluate religious exemptions. Are they talking about the same editorial? A little double speak there? Yeah. Well, let's just see what the First Amendment to the Constitution says. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now let's take those words apart. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. probably most people don't quite understand what that phrase means, an establishment of religion. And I'll give you a short course in it. In order to understand the phrase establishment of religion, it's necessary to deal with the longest word in the English language, anti-disestablishmentarianism. At least it was the longest until supercalifragilisticexpialidocious came along. And that phrase comes from England. You'll know that England was a Catholic country until Henry VIII decided that he wanted to swap wives, get rid of his wife and get a new one. Of course, the Catholic Church treats divorce and remarriage as bigamy, so it wouldn't be possible in the Catholic faith. So Henry VIII separated England from the Catholic faith and started the Church of England. And the Church of England is and was the state religion of England. In other words, some of your tax money went to the Church of England. It still does.
Even the Prime Minister has to be from the Church of England. Cannot be Catholic or any other religion.
It cannot be a Methodist or a Baptist or whatever. So from time to time, there have been movements to disestablish the Church of England, to pass a law in Parliament that says the Church of England is just a church, that's it. It's not entitled to government support. So people that are members of the House of Commons that advanced that proposition were called disestablishmentarians. So a disestablishmentarian is one who advocated disestablishmentarianism. So for every force, there's an equal and opposite for a reaction. So those who oppose the disestablishmentarians were called anti-disestablishmentarians. And they advocated anti-disestablishmentarianism. So we've taken that phrase, establishment of religion, and remember when the Constitution was enacted, when the Bill of Rights were adopted in 1791, they applied only to the federal government, not to the states. And we often forget that they are negative rights. They don't tell you what you can do or have a right to do. They tell you what the government can't do to you. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So we took that establishment of religion, and boy, we really, really breathed a lot of new meanings into that phrase. So now establishment of religion means no prayer at school and on and
What
on.
was the thing that's repeated a lot? Freedom from religion.
Freedom from religion, yeah.
Where?
And this whole idea of separation of church and state sounds good, but it's not in the Constitution, and it's not what the Constitution implies. The First Amendment is to protect religion, to protect the non-established religions from the state religion. So that's what the Establishment Clause means. And then you go on to, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So people have the ability to freely exercise their religion. So if in the situation of the vaccine, if a person says, I have, and I was in this situation myself, but I had to cave in, I don't want to take these vaccines, either Pfizer or Moderna, because the manufacturers of those vaccines used cell lines from aborted babies to perfect that vaccine. And I'm not going to support abortion in any way whatsoever, even indirectly. If the Pope thinks it's okay, that's interesting, but it's not binding on me. That's not the way religion operates. It's not the way the Catholic faith operates. And the full statement of what the Catholic Church's position on it is that it's a matter of free will. That every Catholic decides for himself. So if I were in that situation, that's what I'd have said. I don't want to take the vaccine. And I'm not going to take any vaccines until one comes along that is free from the abortion taint. Yeah, then I'll do it. But I have religious scruples on the other side of that. And as I understand the free exercise clause, that would be good enough. And I've spent a fair amount of time talking about the peril that the civil authorities put themselves in when they decide, well, the Pope says you could do it, so no. It's not a matter for civil authorities to decide. I suppose if the assertion of a freedom of religious exemption were totally frivolous, then it could be rejected. Something like, I don't want to take the vaccine because I've had this vision of Martians who are actually sacred, coming to Earth within the next 10 years. And they will examine everyone, and if you took one of these vaccines, they will condemn you. Maybe if that were the assertion, maybe it'd be okay. Something that's totally frivolous.
We laugh now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The way our country has gone, where two men are married, and we have the champion swimmer is a man, and on and on and on. We haven't seen it all yet. So now there is the idea of the reasonable accommodation, and that is that people who advance the religious, the freedom of religion dimension to not taking the vaccine should be reasonably accommodated. And I thought the idea that, well, if you don't do that, then you have to take a COVID test once a week, and if you are sick, obviously you can't come to work. That seems to me like a reasonable accommodation. It is not a reasonable accommodation to let all this time go by and say, well, we asked the AG and he hasn't answered yet. Then a leader, seems to me a leader would figure out the reasonable accommodation himself.
I thought this sole authority health emergency was so that the sole authority could make a quick decision on things.
That's right. That's why we don't want to do away with this magic power, because decisions can't linger. They have to be made rather quickly. Good point, Jose. Yeah, so that's the Daily News. So the Daily News, I guess, is kind of two-faced because, a lot of people only read the headlines. So the folks that read the headline in the hard copy are going to get a totally different impression than the folks who read the headline in the online edition.
Or they get sidelined by this doozy of a sentence, but that doesn't mean people should be allowed to work in an environment where they are likely to catch a virus that continues to mutate and pose a threat to the general population. That applies to everyone, vaccinated or non-vaccinated.
It does. And that's why, there's so much objection here, because there's so much bad information out there. Getting a vaccination does not keep you from getting the disease. It doesn't even keep you from dying from the disease. And it doesn't stop you from communicating the disease. And that's the way it was sold. It was as though it were like the smallpox vaccination or the polio, but it isn't. And then every day I'm online, I'm seeing more articles about people that died or had adverse reactions from these vaccines. So, but of course, the Daily News.
I think more and more this goes by, people are beginning to see behind the curtain, right? To give a little, what's the name of that Wizard of Oz reference there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's somebody pulling the buttons and pushing the buttons and pulling the levers, and we're beginning to see it.
Yeah.
People who hadn't seen it before.
Yeah. The Daily News has its own agenda or narrative. Now, As long as I'm criticizing the Daily News, I got to show you the editorial cartoon that ran today.
Right?
Yeah. And this, some cartoons depend on visual effect. This one doesn't. This one, all I need to do is read it, and you get the drift of it. And when Gannett sold the Daily News to Kaleo Moylan, we were looking for big changes, and we saw some really biased, partisan editorials. And Phil Flores called them on the carpet, and the publisher of the Daily News apologized and said, well, we're still tied to Gannett for a month. They're apparently still tied to Gannett, and apparently they like it.
Yeah, it seems like they're tied by their lips
Yeah.
to a behind.
All right, so this is the wording in today's political cartoon in the Daily News. You can accuse Fox News of a lot of things, but journalism isn't one of them. Now, where does it
Glass houses, Bob.
really? Yeah.
Well, there's three names that we can mention and don't even have to say anything else anymore.
Yeah.
Who's that kid? Nick Sandman.
Yeah.
What about Kyle Rittenhouse?
Mm-hmm.
And most recently, Juicy Smollett.
Yeah.
Okay. Where's those journalistic integrity for the other?
Exactly. And all of the human interest stories that have come pouring out of Waukesha since that African American plowed through the Christmas parade. Yeah, nice try, Daily News, but not today. Okay, so then we look at the Post. Third attempt to clip the governor's pandemic spending powers has failed, but hope for accountability isn't lost. Last week, Guam senators made a third attempt to curb Governor Lou Languero's powers to extend her emergency authority under the Wuhan virus pandemic that has been going on for nearly 2 years. The legislature, or at least the senators who voted for the override attempt, were hoping for more public accountability when it comes to making decisions about how federal pandemic funds should be spent and who should be chosen for these contracts. The override attempt sought to end her emergency powers as a solo endeavor without a legislative counterbalance. There's been so much at stake on this issue. Under her solo emergency authority, the government of Guam is not obligated to seek competitive bids for federally funded pandemic spending via a more rigorous bid process or request for proposals. Vendors and contractors have been handpicked for certain federally funded contracts. The governor has argued that under the system of three co-equal branches of government, she does not need to seek the legislature's authority to declare a public health emergency or extend a public health emergency because the legislative and gubernatorial powers are on the same level. She made some really cockamamie arguments, but I don't think this is one of them. The judiciary of Guam has been making co-equal powers assertion too when it comes to the annual budget process as the third co-equal branch. She has also contended that the legislative step would only slow down emergency response. Yeah. At the end of the day, the proponents for putting a mechanism or mechanisms in place to balance the scale when it comes to the decision-making on federal pandemic funds lack the support of true crucial senators. Wednesday's override attempt resulted in 8 votes in favor. 10 were needed to pass. Tony Atta, Frank Blas, Joanne Brown, Chris Duenas, Jim Moylan, Tina Nelson, Tello Taitagui, and Speaker Therese Terlahi voted in favor of the override. Senators Clinton Rangel, Joe San Augustine, Amanda Shelton, and Mary Torres voted against limiting the governor's emergency authority. Now, this next sentence is really an aggravation. And I don't know who I'm the more aggravated at, Senator Sabina Barris or the Post for tipping their hat to her. Here's what the Senate says. Senator Sabina Paris avoided making a decision 3 times. No, she did not avoid making a decision. And her action counted as a vote against the override. You know, we need people covering the legislative branch who know what's going on at the legislative branch. And we need people, charlatans who act like this, need to be called out. Or else we need to take them at their word and say, and the sentence could read, Senator Sabina Paris was so out of touch with the substance of the matter she was voting on that she passed 3 times in order to collect her thoughts. Because that's the way I'm going to treat these pastors from now on. They're so dumb and they're so ill-prepared that they had to wait until the roll call vote was called before they decided how to vote. Blas and Jose Tetlahi were absent. Chris Duenas on Tuesday said he was seeking an override out of principle and noted that there's been a lot of public support for the measure. Were the senators who failed to join the override tuned into the public pulse? This was not an easy decision for senators. Bill 11 passed narrowly in February before it was vetoed by the governor, who was concerned that it would slow emergency response. An override was attempted at the end of May, but that failed by 3 votes. Another attempt in August failed by 2 votes. In a statement, Duenas noted that Guam's public health emergency has now lasted 2 years, leading to lingering questions. Bill 11 would not have ended this public health emergency overnight and does not limit any administration's ability to protect our people. However, what it would have accomplished is that Bill 11 would have promoted transparency and accountability in the process. This aspect is certainly missing in our government today. And then the Daily News, the Post second guesses a little bit, but there are other avenues to make government spending decisions on federal pandemic funds more accessible to the public after the fact. Senators can require the governor's office and the executive branch in general, et cetera, to submit electronically within a short time frame of the transactions. Invoices, copies of check payments, and bank transfers can be furnished. It just doesn't get to the heart of what we're talking about here. Finally, the legislature and the OPA can work together to create a spreadsheet that will be easy for the public to understand. I don't think the Post understands.
That's not what this bill is about.
It's not what this bill is about, and it's not what the public anger is about. You can't make the people happy with a spreadsheet. They're tired of the whole thing, the masks, the roadblocks.
The ridiculous mandates.
All of the silly mandates, on and on and on. So, you know, both editorials started out looking like I was going to have to get out my blue pencil. But they both blew it before it was over.
Didn't even cross the finish line.
Exactly. Let's take a short break, Jose.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app, AUDACY.
portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we go. End of the card. Before I start talking about the card here, let me just mention something. You know, there are the vaxxed, people who have been vaccinated, and then people who have not been vaccinated. And there's one thing that the two groups have in common, Jose.
And what is that?
Neither group is fully vaccinated.
That's true.
Okay, on the card today, you know, I got to tip my hat to Paul Zerzan outing the phenomenon of systemic racism here in the island in orange versus red. Now I've got my orange versus red placard to demonstrate when we get into those areas where the narrative doesn't match the facts of the situation. I've got Crescinda Uggan versus nepotism. Tall Tales versus separatists, and the left versus the Constitution. So once again, what is this a picture of?
That looks like rice.
Yeah, and what color is the rice?
It is red.
It is red rice.
Most definitely.
Yeah, and if you come along and say, no, it's orange, you might be canceled.
Shut your mouth.
Because the narrative is we don't want outsiders coming in here and telling us what color the rice is. It's part of our tradition. Next, we've got Crescinda Uggan versus nepotism. And this is something that ran on KUAM last night. Cabinet members above step recruitment into new classified position, raising red flags.
Not orange.
Not orange flags, yeah. Above step recruitment has been a hot topic lately, and now at least one cabinet member is being recruited above step into a classified position. Going from the cabinet, which is unclassified, you know, cabinet means the governor can hire anybody for her cabinet. Qualified, it doesn't matter, yeah. Completely open. So somebody from that cabinet then went into a classified position. And here are some of the details. Department of Youth Affairs Deputy Director Crescinda Uggan may be heading the Department of Public Health and Social Services as on paper the cabinet member for the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration, the latest above-step recruit to make headlines. Okay, so she's going to go to the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Now, who exactly is Crescinda Uggan? I don't think her name has ever been splashed across the news before, but she's going from the unclassified position of Deputy Director of the Department of Youth Affairs over to Public Health and Social Services in a classified position. Let's find out who she is. Uggan is the chief, as you were, is the sister of Adelup Chief of Staff John Jr. Calvo. Well, that's convenient. She's the daughter of Civil Service Commission Chair Juan Calvo, wife of acting DPHSS Human Resources Head Tony Uggan. So her husband runs the HR outfit at the agency in which she is going as a classified employee above step. What does this look like, Jose?
What was that N word again? Nepotism?
Yeah. Well, you know, I heard this a long time ago that nepotism, like incest, are okay so long as you keep them in the family.
That's a very true statement.
Yeah. Yeah. Tony Uggan is the HR administrator for the hospital, but an oversight hearing of the hospital revealed he had been recently detailed to public health. So Tony Uggan is the HR administrator for the hospital. They say, we need you over at public health, Tony. We're detailing you over there. He gets there and says, you know, we need to bring in my wife to this department and an above-step recruitment. The newly classified position Crescinda Uggan may fill in the human services administrator. As a human services administrator, well, who will her supervisor be?
Husband number one.
Yeah. And it pays $71,000 in salary. Senator Joanne Brown said, enough is enough with questionable above-step hiring. The senator said this particular recruitment is full of red flags. Because of that direct connection, you'd think it would be hands off. This isn't something the governor is encouraging her cabinet members to do. Brown said, DPHS spokesperson Janela Carrera told KOAM there were 4 applicants for the position, none of whom were related to Tony Uggan. In a statement, Carrera said public health has initially selected Uggan and that public health has also followed, quote, all proper hiring steps so far in conformity with the law. I don't think there is a section in the law that says, Tony Uggan, don't hire your wife above step. That probably isn't in the law. Adelup Communications Director Crystal Paco San Augustine also went to bat for Uggan in a WhatsApp message saying Uggan has expressed her intent to continue public service to our island's youth in a different capacity. Oh, I'm overcome.
Is she getting paid?
No, it's public service.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Then okay.
She's not getting paid.
Right. Public service.
Yeah. So she's getting an above-step recruitment but not getting paid. Yeah. Her intent to continue public service to our island's youth in a different capacity. She has applied as the Human Services Administrator for Public Health as part of their newly established Division of Children's Wellness. Doesn't this whole article just really warm your heart? You know, it's, yeah, you know, she's going to public health on an above-step recruitment, but it's for the children. Yeah. This is an ongoing process and no final actions have been taken at this time. She remains the Deputy Director of DYA. Parenthesis, we just thought we'd try it and see if we could get away with it. But KOAM outed us, so maybe we'll have to scratch it.
Well, we know it's for the children because she turned down a job for the Bureau of Women's Affairs.
Yes, that's true. Despite both Carrera and Paco San Augustine, what both Carrera and Paco San Augustine said, Uggan's hiring isn't final. Public Health released a public notice saying the department intends to hire her above step. Well, that's the law, you know. You have to publish that notice. It has to be 10 days before the hiring. This would give, people like KUAM, me, chance to come out of the woodwork and object. On the face of it, looking at the information provided, it really sends the wrong message to the public. And certainly the fact we're hearing this almost weekly about these issues with regard to above-step recruitment. Particularly for someone to step down from a cabinet position if they're unclassified into a classified position sounds to me like they're making sure they're getting taken care of. Now, how could anybody reach that conclusion? Above step recruitment is where GovGuam agency is intending to hire above step or pay grade they would normally make entering the position because of the exceptional qualifications, experience, or education. Adelup and Public Health did not answer questions regarding any conflicts relative to Uggan's recruitment, whether other applicants were informed she was being recruited above step, and whether Uggan had the experience for the job. Well, let me once again go through Crescinda Uggan's qualifications for this job. Are you ready? Crescinda Uggan, let's see. Uggan is the sister of Adelup Chief of Staff John Junior Calvo, daughter of Civil Service Commission Chair Juan Calvo, and wife of Public Health Human Resources Head Tony Uggan. Is there anything else you need to know?
Checks all the boxes.
Yeah, it's about as qualified as you can get. All right.
Just wow.
Yeah.
Like just that it happens right in front of our faces with no apologies and just like stick it. Here you go.
Yeah, here it is. Like it or lump it. So if we had an ethics commission.
They're too busy Zoom testifying.
Yeah, and they're too busy testifying on bills and things like that.
Still waiting for that high salary.
Yeah, and looking for a shop and on and on. Okay, next item on the card is Tall Tales versus Separatists. Now, I've spent a fair amount of time on this, and I'm going to spend more time on it. Yeah, let's take a short break, and then I'll come back to this item on the card.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
So here we are. Next item on the card is Tall Tales versus Separatists. The Separatists are folks like Melvin Melvin Wanpat, Michael Bavacqua, Hope Christobel, and others of that ilk. And yesterday we played the Hope Christobel video just to give you a sense of what Hope Christobel, she, you know, I guess she could be one of the spokespeople for the separatist movement. She said a mouthful yesterday if you were listening. If you're not listening, we'll play it again next Monday so that everyone has a chance to see Hope Christobel in her glory. But she wants white people to get off the island. White people are colonizers, they're murderers, etc. I really can't do her justice, so I don't want to repeat too much more of what she said. But when she was a senator, she drafted Public Law 20, the bill that became Public Law 23-147, which created the Chamorro self-determination, as you were, the Commission on Decolonization. And that's where Melvin Wanpat works. There is a commission that has 11 ex officio positions on it. Only 9 are filled. Commission is basically a rump commission. Apparently, it never does anything. Melvin Wanpat is, for all practical purposes, the commission. And we talk a lot about decolonization and about this commission, but just looking at the title of the commission really tells you everything you need to know about it. This is the title of the Decolonization Commission. Its full title is Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. And you know, it's a gaslighting operation. For example, one of the things that the statute says is in the legislative findings that the United States acceded to and recognized in the 1898 Treaty of Paris that the political rights of native inhabitants of Guam shall be protected and that their collective right to political self-determination is inalienable. Here's what the Treaty of Paris actually says. The civil rights and political status of the native inhabitants of the territories hereby ceded to the United States shall be determined by the Congress. Now, this is Hope's bill, Hope Christobel's bill, which in her chat with another fellow, she took a certain amount of pride in. I wrote the decolonization law and put this gigantic fib in this decolonization law. So last Friday, there was an insert in the Daily News. No, a week ago last Friday, there was an insert in the Daily News that looked like this, 20 pages, put out by the Commission on Self-Determination, as you were, put out by the Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. And it's comprehensive. And what it does, if you read it, study it, it channels your thinking to the point where you conclude that the only thing that Guam, and I'm not talking about Chamorros, I'm talking about Guam, the island of Guam, the territory of Guam can do is ask Congress to make it independent. Now, the self-determination folks, Melvin Bora and Hope Christobel in her bill 23-147 say that there are only 3 options available: free association, statehood, and independence. And I've gone to some lengths to explain why statehood and free association are not workable options. Independence is. Under Article 4, Section 3, Congress could declare Guam independent tomorrow, just like it did the Philippines on July 4th, 1946. So when you come right down to it, there are only 2 real political status choices for Guam. One is independence, that Guam become an independent country free of the shackles of being a U.S. territory. The second alternative is to stay the way we are, work with Congress to improve some of the aspects of our territorial status, but not become independent. Those are the only two real options. And as I said before, this 20-page hard copy is designed to channel your thinking so that you'll think that Guam really has only one choice, and that's to become an independent country. And I started out on the very first page of this insert, and the very first sentence of the very first page kind of shows or kind of demonstrates what I'm saying about trying to channel your thoughts. And this is how it reads. Resolving Guam's political status is important work that will prepare our island to move into the future of an ever-changing world. So it says resolving Guam's political status, yet we know that Hope's bill talks in terms of implementation and exercise of Chamorro self-determination. Chamorro and Guam are not synonymous. They don't both refer to the same thing. Chamorros live on Guam. Some of them do. Most of them live in the U.S. mainland. Guam is the pre-contact home of Chamorros. But Guam, determining the political status of Chamorros and determining the political status of the island of Guam, two completely different things. And I went through this first page, the first four paragraphs, and the fourth paragraph on the first page is like this. Guam is unlike any other place, and there is no perfect model for us to follow or imitate. Well, they're saying that three of the choices are statehood. Statehood is the perfect model for us to follow or imitate, if that's what we have in mind. But if it isn't, then it's somewhat less than perfect. And then the last sentence of that paragraph, self-governing status is the only way to empower the people of Guam to protect our own interests and make decisions that are right for us. Self-governing status. That could only mean one thing, independence. And then, of course, it goes on to say to empower the people of Guam when Cristobal's bill is not about the people of Guam. It's about the Chamorro people. Once again, the title of the bill, Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. So the very first page starts that channeling that I've mentioned is the basic design of the whole paper. On the next page, you find an article, What is Sovereignty? And there's a good explanation of sovereignty written up in such a manner that you conclude that statehood is not sovereign. And the reason that you would conclude that is because a state of the United States is not sovereign, as we understand that definition. An independent Guam would be sovereign. So one of the techniques used here in this insert is to glorify the concept of sovereignty. Kind of like, if you ain't sovereign, you ain't much. And of course, the state of the United States is not sovereign. Free association is a political impossibility. So that just leaves us with one possible status other than where we are now. I'm going to skip next to an article that's entitled, Who Are the Colonized? Colonized peoples are those who are controlled by an outside power. All right, let's break for the big halftime show, and I'll come back to Melvin Bora's gaslighting here.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Laying out plans to fight the virus. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Just one day after the news, the Omicron variant surged to become the dominant variant in the U.S., President Biden will address the nation about what the country needs to do. Fox's Kevin Corke says the White House says don't expect any game-changing announcements, though.
The speech is expected to build on his winter plan and address access to testing, booster shots, no lockdowns, mask mandates, and, of course, the risk of the unvaccinated.
This is not a speech about locking the country down. This is a speech outlining and being direct and clear with the American people about the benefits of being vaccinated, the steps we're going to take to increase access and to increase testing, and the risks posed to unvaccinated individuals.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. The CDC said Monday that Omicron has overtaken the Delta variant in the U.S., accounting for 73% of last week's new cases. The jury in the murder trial of former Minnesota police officer Kim Potter resumes deliberations Tuesday. Potter says she meant to taser Daunte Wright, not shoot him. Her defense attorney, Earl Gray, during closing arguments Monday.
My gosh, a mistake is not a crime. It just isn't.
But prosecutor Matthew Frank said,
"There's no mistake defense. You will not see an instruction on the defense of mistake."
If convicted of manslaughter, Potter could get a decade behind bars. In two other high-profile trials, a jury in New York's weighing sex trafficking charges against British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell. And in San Jose, California, a jury's considering criminal fraud charges against fallen Silicon Valley CEO Elizabeth Holmes. America's listening to Fox News.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
The Supreme Court may soon consider two separate series of appeals involving federal vaccine mandates.
Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh is asking the Biden administration to respond to a flood of appeals coming in after a Sixth Circuit ruling that will allow OSHA to move forward with the president's controversial vaccine mandate requiring businesses of 100 or more employees to force vaccinations.
Fox's Matt Finn. Meantime, the White House is asking the Supreme Court to stay lower court rulings that block the mandate for many healthcare workers. A Fox Business poll shows most Americans are happy that 2021 is coming to an end.
This poll shows 70% of respondents labeled 2021 a bad year for America. Slightly less, but still more than half, 55%, called it a bad year for their family.
Fox's Gernal Scott. Playoff implications and COVID concerns were in the spotlight for the NFL Monday.
The Cleveland Browns went into the game with 22 players still on the COVID reserve list, also without head coach Kevin Stefanski. And while the Browns kept it close, a Daniel Carlson 48-yard field goal as time expired gave the Las Vegas Raiders the 16-14 win. Both clubs still in the wild card hunt in the AFC. That says the Minnesota Vikings have moved into the third wild card spot in the NFC playoff picture thanks to a 17-9 victory over the Chicago Bears Monday. The Vikings defense forcing 3 turnovers to go to 7-7. Chicago is now officially eliminated from playoff contention. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And the Bidens have a new member of the family at the White House.
President Biden's brother and sister-in-law gave him the best kind of friend you can have in Washington, a dog. The president introduced the world to his new German Shepherd puppy named Commander in a video posted on Twitter.
Fox's Jill Nato says Commander is 3 months old. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh has done it again, serving up yet another new and improved sub, the Cali Fresh Steak, loaded with tender, flavorful marinated steak on top of thick-cut hickory smoked bacon, smashed avocado, and fresh mozzarella. The Cali Fresh Steak is protein-packed to leave you feeling full and satisfied. Cali Fresh Steak is made on our freshly baked hearty multigrain bread layered with fresh veggies of your choice. Subway, eat fresh.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Okay, so here we are after that big halftime show, a great show every day that we're on the air. It means that we are now in the second half of Tall Tales, and I'm proceeding here with Melvin Wanpat and the separatist movement versus the people of Guam. That's the way I see it. And I've been talking about the creation of Hope Cristobal, Bill 23-130-157, which created the rather creatively named organization called the Decolonization for the Implementation, Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. And I've been analyzing that and breaking it down for you and letting you know that the way I see it, what we're talking about is a commission, a public law, and a design to make Guam independent from the United States. And in order for that to meet with popular approval, a certain propaganda campaign has to be conducted, and part of that campaign is a 20-page insert that was sent out with the Daily News a week ago last Friday, and I'm looking at different parts of that. I'm going to move on now to the part that appears on the what I've labeled page 4. Page 4. And it's entitled, Who Are the Colonized? And it goes like this. Let me start out with, what is colonization? Colonization is the extension of a nation's sovereignty over a territory outside of its borders by the establishment of colonies or dependencies where the colonial people are directly ruled or displaced. Colonization, or the subjecting of people to alien subjugation. I didn't think we were supposed to use the word alien anymore, right? Domination and exploitation constitutes a denial of fundamental human rights. Now that's quite a sentence. Colonization of this, or the subjection of people to alien subjugation, domination, and exploitation constitutes a denial of fundamental human rights. So whenever I see this word, this phrase, human rights, it always causes me to say to myself, look out, here it comes. I know what constitutional rights are. I know what the Bill of Rights is. But when I hear this phrase, human rights, kicked around, what it usually indicates is some leftist utopian vision of a lot of freebies, a lot of free lunches paid for, guess who? By guess who? But, well, the government pays for it, which means when you have these devotions to human rights, what you have to have a redistribution of income and a redistribution of wealth. I don't want someone redistributing the little bit of wealth that I've been able to accumulate in my 83 years. I want to hang on to it. But that's basically what it means. Now, colonization, or the subjecting of people to alien subjugation, domination, and exploitation. So the key word here is exploitation. You're supposed to think, yeah, you know, the United States has really exploited Guam. And
so much irony in this sentence.
Really, yeah. The United States has really exploited Guam. And if one were to ask, well, like what? Like the $2 billion the United States sent over here in the last couple of years?
How dare they?
Yeah. And it constitutes a denial of fundamental human rights. So you're supposed to read this and you're supposed to think, wow, we're really getting the fuzzy end of the lollipop here. This colonization is bad. We got to get rid of it. Then there's a reference to the Charter of the United Nations. And it's interesting that when Guam has a delegate to the United States Congress who can speak on the floor, etc., has a great deal of ability to deal with the U.S. Congress, we're much happier dealing with the faceless bureaucrats in New York called the United Nations. I don't know, and I've never met anyone who was a United Nations official or who worked for the United Nations. I've met lots of congressmen. You don't even need to leave Guam in order to meet congressmen because they come here. Presidents even come here. So it's a real irony that, oh yeah, but you know, the United Nations, what the United Nations said. Next, Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples states that the continued existence of colonialism prevents the development of international economic cooperation, impedes the social, cultural, and economic development of dependent peoples. An end must be put to colonialism and all practices of segregation and discrimination. All peoples have an inalienable right to complete freedom, the exercise of their sovereignty, and the integrity of their national territory. Once again, some really high-flown words that don't mean a whole hell of a lot. It's in the Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries, which, of course, is what I said. The whole aim here is independence. It's not statehood. It's not free association. It's not status quo. It's convincing people that Guam should be an independent country. And these are the reasons stated. Next, the insert goes on to who are the colonized. But I think before I plunge into that, I said that I would change the rules a little bit here while I'm doing this one to accommodate callers in the middle of my presentation rather than waiting to the end, because it's going to be kind of drawn out, and I think introducing callers into the midst will make it a little bit more interesting. And who should call? No other one but our Carl. The most dangerous man in a decolonization debate, our Carl. Go ahead, Carl.
Good afternoon, Bob.
Sir.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying your reading of this. I finally got a copy of it from a friend of mine, and I'm just beginning to read through it, but it's really fascinating. You know, this word, and you know, I'm like a tenth of the way through, so there's a lot more to come. But this word sovereignty is sprinkled so generously throughout this thing. It's like, you know, magic fairy dust. You know, that if we have sovereignty, you know, everything will be, it's just going to be utopia. But, you know, I don't think I need to point out how many places in this world are sovereign that are horrible places to live in. You know, Cuba, North Korea, China, Russia, Venezuela, et cetera, et cetera. There was already over 24 failed socialist-communist experiments in the 20th century. So they have country sovereignty, but the problem is they violate people's personal sovereignty. And of the two, I'm much more interested in my personal sovereignty. My personal freedom is not being violated by a government that has total and complete concentration of political power in the hands of a small elite. And you know, this idea about colonization and colonialism and all this, I keep pointing this out, you know, and I'll just keep pointing it out over and over again, that this is a farce. Every one of the territories or colonies listed in the Fourth Committee's list of places for decolonization are Western colonies. There's not a single socialist-communist colony listed. I'm thinking specifically of Tibet. I'm thinking of Inner Mongolia. I'm thinking of Xinjiang, which formerly was East Turkestan, home of the Uyghur Muslims, of which 1 to 3 million are estimated to be in forced labor camps, which the Chinese Communist Party has euphemistically renamed vocational training camps. You know, this is just a complete farce, what is going on. And it needs to be called out over and over and over again. And I never tire of it. And I'll just keep on pointing it out, how farcical this entire thing is. Sovereignty is not magic fairy dust. What happens once we separate from the United States is that we will be at complete mercy of whatever government evolves out of that. And since the leading spokespeople, the leading figures, spokespersons of this movement to separate from America, and just as important, if not more importantly, from the Constitution that protects our personal freedoms, my hunch is that whatever government evolves out of that is going to the left, as you pointed out before. And I'm not interested in that. And I don't think that the vast majority of the people on Guam are interested in that, including people who are now supporting this movement who don't really realize what they are supporting if this goes to its logical conclusion.
But it makes their tummies warm because it has great emotional appeal. You know, we want to be sovereign. We want to be on our own. We don't want anybody telling us what to do. We want sovereignty.
Yeah, and that was the cry in Africa. You know, when decolonization was a big thing, and many of the countries did go independent. But separating from the colony wasn't the problem. The problem is that the academic class or the people, the Africans, many of them went to Western universities and were exposed to the fad of the time, which was socialism-communism, and they got their degrees and became indoctrinated in this hatred of capitalism and this utopian socialist vision, and they brought this back to the African countries. And many of the countries, after decolonization, swung to the left. And that is what I picture happening here. And we see the same pattern evolving. People who, and Thomas Sowell has commented about this, that the pattern is people getting degrees in the humanities and the social sciences, the so-called soft sciences. You never see the bureaucrats that come back having majored in the hard sciences, in physics or astronomy or things like that. They majored in these soft sciences, and they became because these ideas infiltrated the humanities and the social sciences, they absorbed them and brought them back to their home countries. And that's exactly what we see here. We're not treading any new territory. We are going over a well-worn path in history. And it's very predictable what is going on now and what will happen. And I'm glad you're calling it out, Bob, because it's critical. We will be at the mercy of whatever government evolves out of separation, and it is critical that people understand that. Anyway, that's my 2 bits for now. Anyway.
Well, you said a mouthful, Carl, and I always appreciate your help. So thanks for calling.
All right. Yeah, I'll keep listening. This is really very fascinating stuff. There's much more information about selling the idea of separating from America and the U.S. Constitution. Very little about what comes after that, or what kind of government is planned. What did they envision, other than free energy from windmills and solar panels, and a billion-dollar marijuana industry. I mean, what really is going to happen after that? And I've heard the criticisms about the justice system, you know, the colonizers' justice system after the major Dave Davis judgment. You know, that it was a lot of indignation about the colonizers' justice system. Well, if they don't like that justice system, what exactly do they have planned to take its place that is protecting property rights and contracts and all these other things? That's a very, very concerning question. Anyway, Bob, I'll hang up and I'll keep listening. It's very, very fascinating to listen. And this whole insert, I'm glad I got a copy of it because it makes fascinating reading. It really does. Okay,
Carl. Good talking to you again.
All right. Always a great show. You and Jose are doing yeoman's work.
Thanks, Carl. So I took a peek at Facebook here while I was talking with Carl. I got an interesting post from Frank Ariarte, who says, a friendly reminder, 1982 referendum showed greater than 75% voted closer ties with the U.S. There are approximately 37.3% of the population that are Chamorro. The remaining 62.7% are all others. That should be allowed to determine our status. We are all colonizers whose ancestors came from somewhere. Interesting observation. Yeah, okay, so I'm going into the next section of this paper here. Who are the colonized? Colonized people are those who are controlled by an outside power. Controlled. Who on the island is controlled by an outside power? Are you controlled by an outside power, Jose?
Hold on, I have to ask my handlers.
Yeah. Colonized people are generally subjected to the use and exploitation of their natural resources, labor, and markets, as well as their social, cultural, religious, and linguistic structures by the colonizer. That's all very nice academic sounding language, right? But what does it have to do with where we are and who we are today? Colonized people are generally subjected to the use and exploitation of their natural resources. Whose natural resources? Labor and markets, as well as their social, cultural, religious, and linguistic structures by the colonizer. So, you know, that might have been the case, say, in the Belgian Congo, but I don't think it was ever the case here. But it sounds good, you know, and it makes you think, wow, colonization, as you go through this, colonization bad, sovereignty good, right? These are the two treasures that you pull out of the verbiage here. Colonization is bad, sovereignty is good. By virtue of their colonization, colonized people possess the right to self-determination. Well, that's kind of a tautology, isn't it? If you are colonized, you possess the right to self-determination. Do I possess the right of self-determination? Am I a colonized person? I've lived in a colony for, it's going to be 60 years here pretty quickly.
But you can go off island and still. No, wait, so can I. Trying to find a difference here.
Yeah. By virtue of their colonization, a colonized people possesses the right to self-determination. This is a right given to people and not given to governments. Oh, that's a biggie. This is a right given to people and not given to governments. So if we were to pursue the two that I say we can't pursue, statehood and decolonization, that couldn't be decolonization. Because in order for the territory of Guam to become a state, the territorial government would have to draft up a constitution. And if the U.S. Congress said, yeah, we like your constitution, we've got an enabling act here, we'll admit you, then this one statement rules out statehood, doesn't it? This right is given to people and not governments. The United Nations Covenant on Civil and Political Rights further defines self-determination as a right belonging to all peoples. The term peoples is not defined in international law. Peoples are often described as a group of individual human beings who enjoy some or all of the following common features: a common historical connection, ethnic identity, cultural homogeneity, linguistic unity, religious or ideological affinity, territorial connection, and common economic life. So I think this is a subtle way of saying when it comes to people, Bob, you ain't one of them. As long as you're on Guam, you ain't one of them.
Your rice is orange.
Yeah, you stick with your orange rice because you don't understand, right? Moreover, quote, people shall possess the will or consciousness to be a people and have institutions to express the identity of the people. This is John B. Henriksen, Implementation of the Right of Self-Determination of Indigenous Peoples. Well, you know, I have been accused from time to time, you know, of being too technical, too pedantic, too semantic. You know, and when I say when I talk about my lawyer's toolkit, I always mention that a lawyer carries a knife that's so sharp you could split hairs with it. So, you know, I do spend a fair amount of time talking about words, what they mean, what they don't mean, et cetera, et cetera. But here we go doing the same thing. You know, we're taking the word peoples and we're going to some length to say peoples doesn't mean what you think it means. It really means something else. And if you're not Chamorro, it doesn't mean you. That's basically what they're saying. Now, I grabbed my Constitution again, and guess what the first three words in the United States Constitution are?
It's French. We?
We, the people of the United States. I guess the Constitution the drafters really didn't know what they were talking about, or else they were talking about Chamorros, maybe. Yeah, people shall possess the will or consciousness to be a people and have institutions to express the identity of the people. I'm going to hang on there for a second, and I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go to the seventh inning stretch, and then after the seventh inning stretch, if I'm satisfied that Ron McNinch is a member of a group called People, I will entertain his phone call.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first three payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, three payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Ron, are you now, or have you ever been a person?
Yes, sir, I have been.
You have been you are a person now?
Yes, I am a person.
Would it be fair then to say that if I use the word people, you would be included in that group?
Yes, and unfortunately, we have to even assert that we are a person. That's the unfortunate part.
Uh-huh. So go ahead and tell me more, Ron.
Well, I've been talking about and thinking about this decolonization question for quite a long time. And if you go back to the original law in 1997, they kind of passed it after the election. They promised that they would not quit the Commonwealth effort, that they would keep up all the other efforts, and that the Chamorro-only vote concept would only just be one of many things that they would do. And if you go back and look at the legislative hearings, that's what they were talking about. And that's not what we got. We got a one channel on the TV set kind of approach. And to be blunt, there's a huge amount of shallowness in the approach Guam takes to a lot of these pretty straightforward questions. There's a playbook. There's a playbook within the United Nations. There's a playbook within the United States for making positive progress toward political development. Very, very basic steps Guam can follow, our leaders can follow to really make good progress, to get more out of the federal system, to enhance our citizen rights, to enhance our general civic rights, and we simply have failed to exercise any of those options.
Yeah, I agree, and I've pointed that out on numerous occasions, Ron.
And the other thing is just the habit of trying to shout down anybody who has an alternative opinion or an opinion that's contrary to a very, very small group of people. We're talking about 3 to 6% at most that I'm talking about are able to dominate and shout down anybody who dares to raise any contrary or even alternative ideas or opinions on these questions. It's as if you're not allowed to think or say anything. And if that's the case for me, then that's the case for people across the board in our population. And because it really becomes it ends up taking a lot of emotional energy to try to have to deal with these folks. And for me, it's something I do every day as a matter of course. It doesn't bother me. But the problem is most citizens aren't used to that, and they're easily intimidated by people who are vocal.
Were you watching yesterday, Ron?
I did not see what happened yesterday.
It's too bad, but watch again next Monday because I ran the Hope Cristobal video again and talk about shouting people down. And, of course, Hope Cristobal is the one that drafted this decolonization legislation that we're dealing with. I guess when the first Political Status Commission didn't produce the results that people were looking for, they said, we've got to try something different. We've got to have hope. And that's what we got.
I don't mean to specifically point this out, but I think it is a matter of fact, Judge Klitzkie, that hope is a four-letter word.
True enough. Good point. I hadn't thought of that, but you're right on point. Well, thanks a lot for chiming in, Ron.
And Senator, I think that getting people to talk about these things is the answer, and you're greatly contributing to the conversation.
Well, I'm going to do my best to keep this ball bouncing.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, and then we have Frenchie, who is perhaps our local equivalent of de Tocqueville, right, Frenchie?
Well, that's very flattering, but I don't know if I write as well as Alexis, How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to chime in a little bit over that pro-independence thing, especially since last Sunday, New Caledonia had their third and last referendum on independence from France. And the results came in at, let me see the official website here. The result came in at 96.5% against.
Yeah.
So that was a big result, but part of it is also because the Kanak Maoist Liberation Front decided to boycott the election because at the last minute they realized that they wouldn't be able to give, in case they won the vote, which they didn't want to won the vote because they would not be able to give the social package that France is giving to the inhabitants of New Caledonia, which is basically the same package any French people get and that's a very socialistic type of everybody gets something somehow. So, but it was interesting. It was the third referendum over a 30-year period, basically every 10 years. They were hoping that the last one, which was last Sunday, would give independence, but it didn't happen. And in the this came in an environment where the French have a presidential election in April coming up, and our very internationalist president, Mr. Macron, is in deep trouble right now. There are some scandals around him, and then also the right side of French politics is in a big upheaval right now with several candidates that were pushing for French sovereignty and so on. And it also came on the back of the AUKUS snafu that happened earlier in September, with the Biden administration giving nuclear submarines to the Australians, and which came on top of on the back of a French naval building. So suddenly, when they met at the Summit of Seven, Biden and Macron came with an understanding that maybe an independent New Caledonia, which the Australians have been pushing for, would not be beneficial to the AUKUS alliance because Nouméa's harbor would make a great naval base. So that also comes up with, I'm sure you saw it, last month there was a lot of civil unrest in the Solomon Islands between pro-Beijing and pro-Taiwan islands, basically fighting one another, and the Australians having to send troops to keep order in the Solomon Islands. So that brings us to our pro-independence people here on Guam, with one senator, Senator Perez, who we know has very close tie to CCP-friendly organizations, which is somehow kept silent by the Republicans here on Guam, and I wonder why they don't want to talk about it, because they should. It's a very potent thing that is happening. We have one of our senators who is in the pockets of far-left groups that have direct ties to the CCP. We have most of the leaders from the pro-independence movement that are tied either directly or indirectly to the UOG and Gov Guam, which means they all are on the payroll of official government entities. They live off those salaries, and at the same time, the groups the non-profit groups that they have created all receive subsidies from Gov Guam or grants through the UOG. And Bob Underwood's cottage industry has put that in place actually very smartly. They've been very smart about getting all that financing, which allows them to put up those copy and paste statements like you were reading, which are nothing else but rehashing of the 1962 Khrushchev liberation movement of the colonial power, some colonial powers, which is basically what they are doing. It's almost copy and paste to a T. So it's very interesting that this is coming up now at a time where, of course, the U.S. wants to expand the military presence on this island and not lose any more islands in the Pacific to the Chinese, who are being very, very aggressive. So it's interesting to see people that are willing to have a little cottage industry at the risk of being the useful idiots for a very anti-American government who doesn't have a very good background as far as colonies, because China has colonized Tibet in the 50s, literally by committing genocide of Tibetans and bringing in a new Han population to replace the Tibetans by Han Chinese. They have done the same thing in the Inner Mongolia area, and they are in the process of doing it again in the Xinjiang province with the Uyghurs. And while you can debate here about how poorly the Chamorros have been abused by the American colonial power, it pales in comparison. There is only two countries that really colonize people in the world. One is Israel, and we know how controversial the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is, and how people are using it to split the debate here in the United States. But the biggest colonial power in the world at this time is China. And we have seen how they are colonizing islands, uninhabited islands in the middle of South China Sea, how they are colonizing Hong Kong with very undemocratic means, and how they are threatening to colonize Taiwan. So we have a lot of very interesting issues there, and the contradiction could not be more stark than it is. Because this is exactly what the pro-independence people are pushing for, is the takeover of Guam by the CCP, nothing else. Because their nature does not like a vacuum, and the vacuum is there, and the big guy around would be China, even though the Japanese are waking up to the threat now. So that's what I had to say.
Well, that was a mouthful, Frenchie. As usual, you always make a good contribution, so I appreciate your calling in.
You're welcome.
You called in just as I'm about to leave for Churchill Downs, so thanks for your call.
Okay. Well, have a nice trip to Kentucky.
I will. Thanks.
All right.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The holidays are here and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visitguam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
So here we are, Churchill Downs. That means I've got about six furlongs until the finish line. And I'm going to, I have another really interesting item on the card. It's called The Left versus the Constitution. But I think I'll continue on here with this item, which is, let's see, how do I build this on the card? Tall Tales versus Separatists. Tall Tales, that's me. I am the tallest of all tailgaters, and I'm going to go toe-to-toe with the separatists because I don't want Guam to separate from the United States. I want Guam to stay as a part of the United States. I want Guam to be a part of the American family. I want to use my meager talents to help improve our relationship with the United States government, but I certainly don't want Guam to become an independent country. Not as long as, as long as I live here. And, if there were ever any doubt, when the separatists come along and the very first thing that they do to draw attention to themselves is say, we're going to have a vote here. We're going to vote on some really important stuff, but Bob, you can't vote. Yeah, that's getting off to a really good start. So picking up here with kind of the same thing, next paragraph. In Guam, the colonized people are defined as native inhabitants or people of Guam. Defined by who? Hope Cristobal. You got to have hope, right? This is consistent with item 1 in the definition above. The native inhabitants of Guam are a people who have a common historical connection, colonization under the administration of the United States. The United States is the seceding colonial power over the lands and people of Guam, acceded to and recognized in the 1898 Treaty of Paris, that the political rights of the native inhabitants of Guam shall be protected and their collective right to political self-determination is inalienable. A lie. Just a lie. And that was in the legislative findings of Hope's bill, and they're quoting it again here. And once again, this is what they want you to believe. The United States is a succeeding colonial power over the lands and people of Guam, acceded to and recognized in the 1898 Treaty of Paris, that the political rights of the native inhabitants of Guam shall be protected and that their collective rights to political self-determination is inalienable. That's what Hope put in her bill. This is the sentence in the Treaty of Paris that addresses this matter. And it says, the civil rights and political status of the native inhabitants of the territories hereby ceded the United States shall be determined by the Congress. So when someone lies to you about something that's this important, tries to just slide it by you, right? Figuring most people are not going to get out the Treaty of Paris and see that this isn't true. When someone tries to trick you like that, then you have to be suspicious of everything else they're doing. And that's exactly why I'm spending this time here, because the whole thing is, as I've pointed out before, to channel you towards sovereignty and away from colonialism. And the only way to do that is for Guam to be an independent country. So, there's the lie there about the Treaty of Paris. And then going on, by recognizing the United States as the colonizer of Guam, Guam law also recognizes the native inhabitants of Guam as the colonized people. And Guam law here is Hope Cristobal's bill. Guam law states that the native inhabitants of Guam shall mean those persons who became U.S. citizens by virtue of the authority enactment of the 1950 Organic Act of Guam and the descendants of those persons. Now, this was determined to be a proxy for race by the Ninth Circuit in the Dave Davis case, Dave Davis versus Guam, a proxy for race. And I've demonstrated a proxy for race before, and I'll do it again because I don't like the proxy, that other proxy either. And it's like this. Well, there was a grandfather clause in the law. So my cousin was grandfathered in. He didn't have to get a new license. He was grandfathered in. Grandfather clause. Well, where did that come from? Well, it came from the Jim Crow South, when the 15th Amendment gave the vote to everybody in the South. Former slaves could vote. Well, the Jim Crow Democrat Party wouldn't have that, so they came up with various means to keep people from voting, one of which was a literacy test, an extremely hard literacy test. So in order to vote, you had to take this literacy test and pass it. And if you didn't pass, you couldn't vote. Well, it's the kind of thing I warm up to. I want voters to be intelligent. But of course, by doing that, an awful lot of white folks couldn't vote either. So the workaround was this. The southern states had laws that said something along these lines. Provided that the prospective voter whose grandfather voted prior to 1861 is excused from taking the literacy test. Well, how many former slaves had grandfathers who voted before 1861? So in 1915, the Supreme Court determined that an Oklahoma grandfather clause along these lines was unconstitutional because it didn't say Negroes can't vote. It didn't say black people can't vote. But it said this whole literacy test thing was a proxy for race. And that's what the Ninth Circuit said about this. People who became citizens by virtue of the Organic Act and their descendants. So, and interestingly enough, that change in the law only came along after Rice versus Cayetano. Yeah, more systemic racism. Rice was not able to vote in a Hawaiian homelands election, so he brought suit. The case went to the Supreme Court and decided Rice versus Cayetano that kind of racial discrimination was unconstitutional, which of course was branded as another example of systemic racism. Guam law states that the native inhabitants shall mean, let's see, the law further states it is the intent of the legislature to permit the native inhabitants as defined by the 1950 Organic Act, which is a stretch, to exercise the inalienable right to self-determination of their political relationship with the United States. Okay, well, I've come to the end of the rainbow here. I'll pick this up tomorrow. I think I'll go with the left versus Constitution first, however. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Omicron dominates the U.S. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Just 3 weeks after its first appearance in the U.S., Omicron becomes the dominant variant. And that may be behind yesterday's surge in cases of nearly 254,000, twice the daily average. Later today, President Biden will address the nation about these latest developments.
The White House tuning its messaging as the Omicron variant surges, even among the fully vaccinated and boosted.
We continue to see, and our health experts assess, that you're 14 times more likely to die of COVID if you have not been vaccinated.
The administration's vaccination campaign buoyed by a Friday night ruling from a federal appeals court, turning the vax or test mandate for large private businesses back on. But a Supreme Court battle looms ahead.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich at the White House. A first for the House January 6th committee as it targets a House member for questioning.
The January 6th commission has notified Representative Scott Perry that it seeks an interview and documents from him. Committee Chairman Benny Thompson wrote in a letter to Perry that multiple witnesses pointed to his involvement in a plan to install Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark as acting Attorney General. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
People in 6 states, including Kentucky, are trying to put their lives back together after this month's massive tornado destruction.
How can somebody lose everything that they have had, put all their blood, sweat, and tears in for years, gone in seconds?
Stacy Sullivan in the hard-hit town of Mayfield. The governor said yesterday a 9th candle factory worker died from injuries sustained in the tornado, bringing the death count to 76. And Dow futures showing a possible rebound on Wall Street today after the blue chips 433-point drop yesterday. America's listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Stay on top of the latest news and information from Fox News. Listen and download the Fox News Hourly Update on your time. The trending stories you need anytime you want it.